Well, now BBC News. Sri Lanka is grappling with its worst economic crisis since independence more than 70 years ago. Rajini Vaidyanathan reports from Colombo.
An island paradise where tensions are rising. Millions living through an economic nightmare.
1 kilo used to be about 100 rupees and now it's 200 rupees a kilo.
So that's doubled.
Double, yeah.
If you want to get an idea of the desperation that's being felt across Sri Lanka, you just have to come to a petrol forecourt.
We are in a national crisis right now.
Hospitals running out of medicines.
So if this continues, I'm afraid to say there may be a situation where we won't be able to save the patient.
The ruling family blamed for this mess, refusing to go. The result, a mass movement Sri Lanka's never seen.
You can see the unity of the people. You can see the unity of the Sri Lankans.
Chanting for change. Sri Lankans are on the streets, demanding their president, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, known as Gota, step down. Fed up with fuel shortages, rising prices and daily power cuts.
I have never joined a protest before because I've led a privileged life. So this is the first time even people like I have been affected with over 10 hours of power cuts.
None of us have ever seen this moment where Sri Lankans have stood up, regardless of their caste, their creed, their religion. They have just stood up and said, no, go home. This is our country, our democracy.
Thousands of people have gathered at this protest in the Sri Lankan capital, Colombo, and across the nation. People have been demonstrating in their numbers. Day by day, the strength of anger towards the government has just grown. And just look at the crowds who've gathered here today. And the one thing that's quite striking is just how in a country that was once divided by civil war, people are coming together like never before. Rich and poor, young and old, people of different faiths. Almost everyone I've spoken to here says they've been hit by this current economic crisis. And almost everyone I've spoken to here blames the president, Gotabaya Rajapaksa. The face of a once popular leader, loathed by protesters, who blame him for corruption and mismanagement. As Defence Secretary, he was accused of brutally crushing Tamil rebels to end a decades-long civil conflict. But now, this economic crisis has helped heal those wounds of war. Signs of a nation ready for change. And behind every one is a story of struggle. You're a young family. How is this crisis affecting you?
It's massive. It's affecting us a lot. I mean, we just can't give what our kids are asking for. Like, it's very, very disturbing. We haven't, I don't know when we last got some fruits for the kids. It's so expensive.
Really?
Yeah, it's very expensive. We can't afford it all.
Would you say you're a fairly well-off family normally?
Yes. So I used to work for corporate and my wife is a banker. And so I got laid off at the beginning of Corona crisis. And then I was courageous enough to start my own startup. So it was a tech startup. But for almost 2 years, I've been paying my staff and I'm running out of capital. And it's purely not because of my failure, it's because of failure of the government. So I think it's time to realize that we can do anything we want so long we have right leadership.
Down the road from the protest, we see close up how this crisis is changing the island. Long lines as people wait to fill up on fuel. Soldiers guarding the pumps. It's a scene repeated across the island, including in the southern tourist town of Dangal. If you want to get an idea of the desperation that's being felt across Sri Lanka, you just have to come to a petrol forecourt. People have been queuing for hours at this one, just to get their hands on basics like cooking gas.
In the queue, we meet Sirisena, a rickshaw driver who's struggling to get work. Fuel's more precious than gold, than life itself. At least 6 people have died waiting in the heat. A short drive from the gas station, a parallel paradise.
The beaches aren't as busy as they once were, and here in Dangal, it's practically deserted. This island nation relies heavily on tourism, and the COVID pandemic hit this place hard.
Fewer tourists means fewer dollars spent here, and it's dollars, foreign exchange, which Sri Lanka uses to pay for essential imports. The country's currency reserves have fallen by 70% in the last 2 years. High levels of debt, loans from China, and a wave of tax cuts in 2019 are the reasons the economy came crashing down.
This movement, all these people protesting, did you ever expect that to happen here?
Not at all. Because we've been taught that Sri Lankans are quite complacent when it comes to everything. So no, to see this spontaneous campaign and movement, it's quite surprising. And
to get a better understanding of this crisis, I met Kalani Kumarasinghe from Sri Lanka's popular Daily Mirror newspaper.
Constructive. We are in a national crisis right now.
Why doesn't it have the dollars?
Sri Lanka used to have dollars when our tea exports were doing well, our migrant workers were bringing in the dollars, but as soon as the pandemic happened, our migrant workers had to return. They weren't earning, which was a huge blow to the government and to the economy, because migrant workers are a lifeline in this country.
And it all means that prices are skyrocketing. Back in Colombo, Mohan and Nishantini, who we met at the protests, invite us to go shopping with them, to give us a sense of just how expensive things have become.
So you prefer to come to this kind of market rather than a supermarket?
Yeah, because like supermarkets, you take the case, there's a lot of impulse buying, they're so tempted towards the things, but here at least we can have some level of control.
How much was this a year ago?
Cabbage used to be about 100 rupees a kilo, and now it has gone up to 200 rupees.
Okay, so that's doubled. You've got carrots in here, staple for every meal.
Yes.
How much have these gone up by?
Carrot is also double the price.
Okay.
Still I buy because the kids need them.
Okay.
Yeah. This is radish.
Radish?
Radish,
Yeah.
I used to cook them alone and the leaves alone. Now, I buy little ones and cook everything together to make the quantity.
Okay, so it's really affecting what you eat. And are there some things here?
Capsicum, this chili pepper,
Chili pepper
is a luxury.
That's a luxury now?
I cook them every week those days. It's one of my
Really?
favorites.
Oh.
I eat them every week. But I've cut down on buying them. I don't buy them most of the time. It's like 4 to 5 times up by price.
One of the most striking things about coming shopping here with Mohan and Nishanti is just hearing from them how much things have gone up in price here in Sri Lanka in such a short space of time. And here is where all the imported apples are sold. And in a way, this has become the luxury counter at the market. You've got these small red apples here, which a year ago would cost 100 rupees for 3. Now that's tripled in price because one alone costs 100 Sri Lankan rupees. And it just gives you an idea of the challenges that so many families are now facing in Sri Lanka. They're having to make hard decisions about what they can afford and how much of each item they can afford as well.
Rice has also soared in price. At this store, they're unloading bags of what's become another precious commodity, thanks to a failed experiment in organic farming. In 2021, President Rajapaksa banned the import of chemical fertilisers, hailing the plan at the UN.
Because of its impact on soil fertility, biodiversity, waterways and health, my government completely banned the use of chemical fertilizers, pesticides and weedicides.
But crop yields fell. A nation once self-sufficient in rice production left with no choice but to import more.
Was that a noble idea, trying to switch to organic farming?
In principle, I don't think there was anyone who disagreed with the idea. We all want a healthy nation. Obviously, this is something that should be done slowly, strategically, so as to ensure that farmers don't lose their livelihoods. But that's not what happened. The farmers had no fertilizer, they lost their harvests. When you don't have their staple food, rice, vegetables, which we live on, that's a problem.
Back with Siddhi Sena, who we met in the fuel queue, it's a similar story of survival.
කන කෑම ගන්න ගත්තත් යාමට උටස් ගාලා ලයිට් යනවා. හරිම තරහක් දුකක් වේදනාවක් ඇති වෙනවා. කුප්පි ලාම්බුවක් තමයි ඉතින් ඉස්සර තිබුණා වගේ කුප්පි ලාම්බුවක් තමයි පත්තු කරගන්න වෙලා තියෙන්නේ.
Well, this has become a daily occurrence for millions of Sri Lankans. A short while ago, the power went and it won't come back for several hours. And families across the country are having to contend with these regular power cuts, including Kusamavati, who's had to cook by kerosene light, and they're going to have dinner by kerosene light as well.
දවසට උදේට කෑම වේලක් දවල්ට මොනවා දෙවේලක් කන්නේත් බොහොම අමාරුවෙන් තමයි.
As they struggle to eat, they blame the president they voted for.
ජනාධිපතිවරු අගමැතිවරු ඇමතිවරු මන්ත්‍රීවරුන්ගේ මේ මිනිසුන්ගේ කන් ඇහෙන්නේ. ජනාධිපතිවරණයක් තියලා ජනාධිපති කෙනෙක් පත් වුණොත් හරියයි කියලා එහෙමත් හිතෙනවා. ගෝඨාභය මහත්මයා තියාගෙන නම් මේක හරියන්නේ නැහැ. මේ පුදුම විදියට ඇත්තටම හිතට විශාල තරහක් එනවා මේ.
When frustrations reached boiling point outside the president's house and across the island. One man was killed while others were injured as police opened fire. Authorities have arrested dozens. Protesters accused the president of cracking down on dissent. He's clinging on to power alongside brother Mahinda, who's prime minister. Part of a political dynasty which has ruled this island with an iron grip, the president now admits he's made mistakes and is promising to rectify them. But it's hard for Sri Lanka to recover. Baby Afia is being treated at the largest children's hospital. Staff here and across the country are running out of life-saving drugs and equipment. Sri Lanka imports most of its medical supplies. If the dollars don't come in soon, treatments will have to stop.
Now, these are difficult times. These surgeries, we need very specific things. We don't know what would happen if the dollars don't bring these things to the country. We might end up in a very difficult situation. This is a very stressful period.
Health officials at this hospital agreed to speak to us, but I've spoken to many doctors across Sri Lanka who say that the government says they're not allowed to speak out in an individual capacity. But they tell me that they are worried that their hospitals are running low or running out of essential medicines, and that if something isn't done soon, Sri Lanka will face a medical catastrophe.
This is a crisis of scarcity, with no clear end in sight. Medical unions are appealing to the world for help.
We need supply to come in whatever the form, whether it is from any other country, the government procurement, or if it is an individual donation. So if this situation continues, there will be a day in the near future, maybe a couple of weeks or 1 month. I'm afraid to say there may be a situation where we won't be able to save the patient life or limb.
These are dark times for Sri Lankans. Families like Mohan and Nishantani's fear for their future.
How we used to be and how we are now, it's very challenging, and really worried about the kids especially, their education, the cost of living, everything is going high and getting worse day by day. So trying to, survive each day.
Day at a time.
One day at a time.
Even a few months ago, it would have been hard to imagine scenes like these in Sri Lanka, but here in the capital, Colombo, and in towns and cities across this nation, people are protesting, even right now in the pouring rain. It just gives you a sign of the resolve and the determination that so many people from so many backgrounds have.
And until he goes, protesters say they'll stay.
Well, it was a very mixed bag today across the UK, not particularly pleasant.